civilians still being killed in Gaza, hostages still being held and tortured there by Hamas and other Islamist groups. Many others, hostages that is, are dead or missing. No sign of any deal at this stage to release hostages in that prisoner exchange. And huge protests still, almost daily, inside Israel itself, of varying in nature, but very much protests against the decisions that Benjamin Netanyahu's government is making around deal versus continuing the war. So it's far from clear what will happen next in that part of the world. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Ehud Olmert, former Prime Minister of Israel between 2006 and 2009, who led the country during its 22-day war with Gaza. But this one clearly a very much longer war. Ehud Olmert, thank you for joining me. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
In your view, has Benjamin Netanyahu got anything right since October the 7th?
Very little. The basic Israeli counteroffensive, of course, was unavoidable and inevitable. I think that there was no one in the world, at least no one, the part of the world which is significant for us, that didn't agree with the need to reach out for the killers, the murderers that committed this horrific, brutal attack that killed more than 1,200 Israeli civilians in their homes, in the living rooms, in the bedrooms, with their pajamas, the children, and their mothers, and their grandparents. I mean, it was inevitable. So the basic decision, of course, was right. Not much more than since then was done in the right way, with the right restraints, and with a reasonable projection about what should come next, unfortunately.
I'll talk more later about what comes next, because as you say, that's far from clear, is it? On the prosecution of the war, though, what Benjamin Netanyahu and others in support of him and his way of doing this war, what they say often is, look, we get that it is appalling that so many civilians have died in this, but that they place at the door of Hamas because of the tunnel system, the lack of access to that protection in the system to civilians. They just say this is a war like no other war. Do you dispute that it is a war like no other war because of the way that Hamas has set up Gaza?
This is a bad war. There's no question about it.
A bad war.
Inevitable, as I said, unavoidable, but it's a bad war. Now, if this was unlike other wars, let's face it, we've seen through our lifetime. You're young, I'm a little bit older, so I've seen perhaps more, and I know what happened in the Second World War in civilian centers in major cities in Germany, in England, in Japan, in all kinds of places, and of course, all the other wars since then. So, it's, I don't want to compare. I can say this, that what is known, is a kind of, I don't like it, a technical term, the collateral damage. It was anticipated from the outset, of course, that there will be what is known as a collateral damage, because when the Hamas is embedded in the most densely populated area in Gaza, on ground, underground, in hospitals, in public facilities, in mosques, in schools, in private homes, and you want to reach out for the killers and for the murderers, the collateral damage is unavoidable. However, after 2 years, you have to look at it not with the immediate spontaneous emotional reaction of the first 2 days or the first 2 weeks or the first 2 months, but with a broader perspective. And you have to ask yourselves, okay, that is what we have achieved. We have destroyed 70% of the buildings, completely turned into rubble. There were more than 60,000 Palestinians killed, and most of the leadership of Hamas been eliminated. Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Def, Ismail Haniyeh, all of them, high-ranking, low-ranking, medium-ranking commanders of Hamas. So many thousands of them were killed. What do you want to achieve now, which is worth the cost of the lives of Israeli soldiers, of the lives of the hostages, and of the lives of innocent Palestinians that are not part of terror?
And what is your best guess as the answer to that question? Why do you want to continue now? What do you think Benjamin Netanyahu has in mind as he continues this war?
I don't need to use my background as a student of psychology in the Hebrew University to try and analyze the motivation of Netanyahu. It's been spelled out everywhere that he doesn't want to end the war. He doesn't want to end the war, and that because ending the war now can maybe create a political crisis that will bring down his government. That's what his partners say, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and they seem to have enormous political influence at this present time on the Israeli government.
And if I may, what you're saying there is that he's continuing it for purely selfish political and personal reasons. He quite recently gave a speech where he said, this is like the Battle of Berlin. My aim is to rid this area, for the sake of Israel and the wider area and for the Palestinians, to rid this area of this Islamist terror group and get Gaza back on its feet. Is that all nonsense as far as you're concerned?
This is definitely what he says. I mean, what you'd expect him to say. I do it because of my personal selfish political needs that
But you believe it is purely for his selfish political needs that he continues this?
I believe that there is not any other possible interpretation that can justify it, People are not fully aware of this, but there are millions of Israelis that share my opinion that there is not any...
Well, they're taking to the streets in many
identified political objective that is worth the cost of continuing this battle. You know that thousands of the most significant warriors of Israel, the former generals, former commanders of the army, of the Mossad, of the security services, signed a petition saying, end the war. There is not any goal that can justify continuing the war. I mean, so they are not just, someone, the rank and file from the street, so to say, but the most experienced veterans of Israeli wars for generations that from all walks of life now. Yes, they say, end the war. There is no need to war. There is not anything that can justify it. So one has to ask himself, so then why still going on? It's open for interpretation. I wish I could give him the credit that he believes, but that it can be done. But this is, like a comparison to Berlin of 1945. This is ridiculous. Look, for almost 2 years, Israel has destroyed 70% of Gaza, 70%, much more than even Berlin was destroyed in the Second World War. Okay, and so many thousands of Palestinians were killed. Many of them were Hamas fighters, and they deserved the punishment because they were part of this killing machine that we were fighting for. But there were many thousands that were not part of terror, and they were also killed. And now to say after 24 months that we still need, that there is an imminent danger to the world and to the state of Israel and to the region, that we need to carry on the war, I don't buy it.
One of the things that is on the table, so to speak, from Benjamin Netanyahu to the people of Gaza is that this so-called humanitarian city, tented city, will be formed where every urgent need will be met. You have said that is tantamount to a concentration camp. That's very specific language to use.
No. It's a little flexible interpretation of what I said.
Okay. Well, please put me right.
Yeah, I say that if as was announced by the Minister of Defence, Israel will build a segregated camp in the south of Gaza and will deport hundreds of thousands of people to this camp and then closely walled it around and will not allow any freedom of movement for the people, that will be interpreted as a concentration camp. And I still hold this...
How do you interpret it? How do you interpret it?
First of all, it's not been done yet. Okay, so it hasn't been done yet. So I keep saying what I said. If it will be done, it must be interpreted as a concentration camp. But it's not been done, and I hope it will not be done. I think that, look, I don't want to go into this because I'm not familiar with all the details, and you are not familiar with all the details. No one is familiar with all the details of what exactly is going on in this humanitarian side. Hang on just a minute.
Okay.
We don't know exactly what happens there. The Hamas is trying to provoke in order to try and grab some of the food and the supplies for their needs, and there are all kinds of other events. One thing I know, Israel is in control of Gaza. There are 2.2 million people living there. 99% of them are not involved in terror. It is incumbent upon us to make sure that we provide all the humanitarian needs. Now, no one can sell me, and I'm not an outsider, and I'm not someone from Europe that hates Israel, or I'm not anti-Semite. No one can sell me that a country that can reach out for Tehran 1,200 kilometers from Israel and control the airspace through and in Tehran, that can't provide food 20 kilometers from the Israeli border, when we are in complete control of it. It has to be done, and no excuses can be made. And, this is our responsibility. Okay. If it's not done, this is a terrible failure which can't be forgiven. That's all.
And can I zoom out a bit to what the wider world should do, particularly when it comes to what happens next and what Palestinian leadership might look like? The Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has been blocked from attending the UN General Assembly session in New York next month, along with 80 other Palestinian officials having their visas revoked. Is that the wrong move by the US State Department?
Look, I must say I'm somewhat perplexed by this initiative. President Trump, in his first term in 2020, he presented what he then called the deal of the century, which is the peace plan for Israel and Palestinians. Within that deal, he proposed a two-state solution. Then, not exactly identical to the two-state solution that I proposed, but okay, this was a legitimate plan that he proposed on the basis of two states. So how do you deal with the Palestinians if you don't even want to let them come into the United States? The Palestinian Authority is a very weak and not effective body, unfortunately. They have to reform it. They are responsible for the lack of many developments which could have been accomplished had they been more courageous and more visionaries. But are they worse than what? Than for that matter, for the Russians that are fighting Ukraine now? Are they worse than, the Palestinian Authority? I'm not talking about Hamas. I'm fighting Hamas. I'm in favor of killing every Hamas. Okay?
We're talking about
but these are
Palestinian
the
Authority,
Palestinian Authority. So, not to allow them to come into New York, to punish them because the French president and the British Prime Minister and the German Chancellor want to recognize the Palestinian state while they are in New York, seems to me childish and not constructive in the road to establish a certain dialogue somewhere.
And on that recognition of a Palestinian state, or in Germany's case, intention to recognise it, is that helpful at all to this situation? Or is it the West? Is it the West naively supporting, not meaning to perhaps, but supporting Hamas? Ames?
Had I been privileged to talk with Prime Minister Sturmer before, and I would have advised him, perhaps to think about it twice. And I'll tell you, look, you don't have to sell me the two-state solution. I've proposed it. I proposed it to Mahmoud Abbas in 2008 on behalf of the State of Israel, a comprehensive solution. And a year ago, I signed a joint statement with the former Foreign Affairs Minister of the Palestinian Authority and the former UN Ambassador, Dr. Nasser al-Qudwa, who is the nephew of Arafat. We signed a joint statement about a two-state solution in the war in Gaza on the basis of my proposal to Abu Mazen in 2008. So I don't need a reminder from anyone that a two-state solution is the only possible way to resolve a historical conflict. But to recognize a state that doesn't exist seems to me to be a gesture, but not a more effective, a solid, practical political move. Had I been in Sturmer's and Macron and the others' position, I have used all the power of persuasion of the European Union, of these mighty governments and important governments, to try and create a momentum to bring into the same room the leaders of the Palestinian Authority and the leaders of Israel to embark on negotiations to create a Palestinian state, which is the only possible way to end the conflict. And perhaps what they need to do is, instead of arguing with the American president, to offer him a way to shift the emphasis of the President American attitude towards a two-state solution and negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian Authority.
And just a final question, if I may. We've spoken for the last few minutes about the quality of Palestinian leadership, and in some aspects, the clear lack of quality of it. Let me ask you about the quality of current Israeli leadership. And I don't just mean Benjamin Netanyahu. I would throw names like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich into that mix. The very nature of this government at the moment. How would you characterize it, the Israeli government at the moment?
You guys in LBC, you have a great sense of humor. After all this talk, now you're asking me what do I think about these guys. I think that they're a bunch of thugs.
Okay.
They are extremist, messianic, reckless, irresponsible, with the nature of terrorists in their basic political attitude. In my mind, they're not different from the Iranians, to be very honest with you. And I'm an Israeli. I'm ashamed that this is my government, and I am ashamed that these are the leaders that represent the state of Israel. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are the visionaries, the inspirators of the hilltop youth, which are perpetrating atrocities against Palestinians in the West Bank on a daily basis, which is totally unacceptable, unforgettable, and unforgivable. And this is something that we all hold responsibility for, because this is done within the territories which are completely in control of the state of Israel. And they are the inspirators that are supporting these hilltop youth. So there are the Israeli government. This is Netanyahu, and these are his buddies, and they look like what I said. And as I said, I hope that they will be changed as soon as possible.
Thank you. We must leave it there, but